Thanks.
Uh,
All right, we're here with Ryan Fritzky in the Fireside PM podcast. Ryan, good to see you, my man. How you doing?
Good to see you, Tom. It's been too long, so I'm glad we could do it live.
We'll do it live.
Yeah.
um, just for the audience, Ryan and I go way back to 2009. I think 2009. Holy cow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And you were just a young whippersnapper, kind of a high potential PM moving up in the world. It's been a while.
Yeah, no, I guess I was hit with the PM bug by Tom himself. So I feel pretty blessed showing up here on this podcast. All thanks to Tom all the way. And I think I was in marketing at an ad tech company
Hmm.
working, and then Tom showed up and brought all this product management gusto coming from Google and kind of this way of doing things, and got everyone fired up, including myself. And so I think I was one of the first PMs to join you, Tom,
Yeah.
and
I
learn the ways.
I think when I first joined, were you the only direct report I had? You might have been.
I think so. I think so.
Maybe Wes joined shortly after, but yeah, it was a small but very potent team
That's right.
when we got going. And what did you study at UW? Like, what
So
was
I was
your tech
a
stack?
business finance undergrad. So I
Love it.
thought I was going to go into investment banking.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our mutual friends, Kirby Winfield, actually hired me out of college because at the time, Google just went public,
Mm-hmm.
and there was all this excitement around ad tech and PPC. And
Sure.
I got caught up in that. And so I thought, you know what? Finance is a great background. And at
Mm-hmm.
least I can read some business statements. And it has been a great backbone for my career, and but I got excited about marketing and product and early stage product and caught that bug.
So you are the co-founder of Beanbox now. Uh, First of all, tell us a little bit about Beanbox, and then how did you go from ad tech PM to coffee magnate, or however you describe
Yeah,
your current role?
yeah. So I'm kind of all marketing and sales, and then as a co-founder, there's kind of everything else corporate. And my our mutual friend and my business partner and co-founder Matthew Burke, who's a technical founder. We so just to back up a step, I guess we actually started a mobile app business together,
Mm,
and so we were in 500 square foot shared studio space, and we were working on apps for people to share personal recommendations.
mm-hmm.
And like everyone did in the Wild West, after Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion, there's a lot of excitement in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And we were interviewing people in coffee shops in this neighborhood called Fremont in Seattle. It's a very eclectic, artsy neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and there are a lot of people who are roasting their own coffee. And so we saw things like tasting notes on chalkboards and rotating single origin coffees, and the coffee just tasted different than it was downtown where we were drinking Starbucks. And
Mm-hmm.
so we were interviewing people because customer empathy is important, as you know, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And we we had, like, the whole time we were interviewing people, we're like, God, this coffee is really good. And so there was a certain point where, after a couple pivots within the app, we weren't gaining the traction we needed to raise a round of financing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had this idea around providing this coffee experience to people all over the country that we thought was pretty unique to Seattle coffee culture. And it was starting to pop up in other cities in different ways, but there there's there's something just fundamentally different about it. So we would send these craft bags that were hand stamped to people on the East Coast as gifts.
Mm.
But because Matthew Burke is an engineer, we were able to say, okay, we've got this app thing going on that we've invested a lot of blood and sweat in.
Mm-hmm.
But what if we put a website up, give ourselves 2 days to test this concept of this kind of coffee subscription box, coffee tasting box, 4 different roasters, 4 different coffees, and you get it every month. And so we did that, and we couldn't hire a designer, couldn't spend any money. That was the rule. And the other rule was we had to be able to take a credit card by that second day. And so we put up this picture that was really a photoshopped beanbox. And we took a birch box, actually, which was a curated beauty box.
Yeah.
And we photoshopped it and put some beans around it. It's still on the internet. It looks really scary. Amazing that we did that. We were very embarrassed. But we put it up. It was a kind of a single product site. And we wanted to see, would people buy this product? Because if we were going to invest kind of any time in a pivot, we wanted to see if there was traction, and we didn't want to spend any more money. And so, because it was such a big change from what we were doing with the mobile apps, and as it turned out, people started buying this product, and so we had to figure out what the physical product was, because we knew we could create a website and prove that we could buy this product, but we didn't actually have the roaster partnerships or anything else. So we drove around around Seattle talking to roasters, and we kind of begged them for us to buy a little coffee, and then we're all these new things to us, figuring out the physical product with shipping. And so we did all this work, and we set our first shipment for September 15th, 2014. So we're almost at our 9-year anniversary of our first shipment. We learned very quickly that Beanbox was a great gift for people who love coffee, giving that tasting experience.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, we saw enough data that said there's something. And so from there, we went forward in kind of making that pivot and telling our investors that, yeah, we're a tech company, but we have this physical direct-to-consumer product that we're trying out. And so and again, we were in a 500 square foot building, hand filling bags of coffee to start with. So that was kind of the start.
What was that conversation with the investors like? Were they completely surprised? Were they ready to change things up? Like, what was their take when you told them that you were thinking about, investing more in this new business?
Yeah, it was definitely a mixed bag at first, but I think in general, everybody is, especially at the angel stage, is excited because what good I think angel investors will tell you is we invested in you guys, not necessarily this one model. In fact, most of them will say, "Hey, we knew you were going to change at some point. Maybe not this dramatic, but it was." People were excited that we hit on something and that we were coming to them with real traction, like real news.
Yeah.
And not just like, hey, we've got this like idea. We think it can be big.
Yeah.
Just give us some time to like figure it out. And instead we kind of came to them with some data. And I think that was kind of the difference in their reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, is that the glorious Seattle summer sunshine that I'm
Yeah,
seeing
I
in the
know. I'm
background?
like trying to avoid it here, but yeah, it's creeping down on us here.
Well, you gotta enjoy it while you got it, man.
I know, I know. I
It's
just don't want this inauthentic halo around my
That's right. It was like I felt like the maker was coming back,
head.
I found on my Facebook a video that I did about Beanbox from when the hell was it? Looks like October of 2014. So those must have been early days for you guys. Do you want
Yeah,
to
you were an
do,
early adopter.
do you
So
want to let's take a little trip down memory lane. I'll show you. It's pretty funny. Let's see. I'm wearing a poachable t-shirt. I'm Tom.
And this is Ryan.
And we're about to do our first unboxing of Beanbox, which is a Seattle startup. And we'll see what it looks like, shall we?
Yeah.
We open up the box of the Beanbox. And then notice here, it's been signed by the founders. I think that's Matthew and Ryan. And by the way, this is the name of my own startup, Poachable. We like that's a cross promotion. Okay. Roasted with love in Seattle, Washington. Very nice. They stamp it, very artisanal, with the nice fancy, what is this? Tissue paper. Because you will look at it and be so happy you'll cry. Ooh. Now here is nice, colorful tasting notes.
And here is the chocolate.
And chocolate. And here are the different kinds of coffees. This is Kuma Coffee, the polar bear, which is the same mascot as the Bowdoin College. Oh my God, dude. What is that like watching your product kind of opened up, I guess a month or two after you launched the service?
that was nerve-wracking, and as you can see on that box, that was like a stock box. Everything was hand stamped by the founders, and the chocolate was kind of this last minute ad. And turns out not only is that stuck, but like that's become a real thing. Like
Yeah.
kids at 3 o'clock when the postal service delivers your coffee,
Right.
you're probably not going to grind it and drink it at that moment. But with the chocolate in there,
Oh yeah.
you can look forward to a little treat before you have the coffee. Or we found kids look forward to the beanbox coming because they want the candy in there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Reminds me of like the little toys and cereal boxes back in the day. But the product has largely been consistent, or has the strategy changed? How has the definition of bean boxes and offering changed from 2016 or 2014? What was it? What the hell was it?
Yeah, ended 2014.
2014 to now, like 9 years later.
I'm shifting here. Let's see if we can get the.
Dude, that Seattle sunshine. Don't knock Seattle. They got plenty of sun over there.
Yeah. So some things have changed and some haven't. So I think like the core of Beanbox is that we're really good at curation, and people hire Beanbox for a curated coffee experience and to get access to unique coffees you can't get locally, right? And so I think one of the things we learned early on is that you go to the grocery store, and even people who consider themselves coffee snobs have no idea, like, really the differences or what's good, or maybe they heard of one roaster that's by their work. Right. But like the idea of curation and being able to provide that experience to people nationally and to show them what's new, or who's really good at a small batch dark roast, or who's really good at experimenting with different processing and gives you almost a tea-like coffee experience that you never thought you'd like. And so I think like that's still the heart of what we do. Our brand is still about the morning. So
Mhm.
we're all about delivering better mornings. And so that kind of goes into all the language we use and our product thinking. But, one thing that has changed is we exclusively started our coffee subscriptions as tasting boxes. And I think where we've evolved to is tasting is a great way to experience what we do, the curation, the variety. Um, but people want us to fill their cup. They
Mm.
want more coffee. And so I think a big shift we've made over the last kind of year and a half is our products are now oriented to fill your cup. So we lead with our coffee bag subscriptions. It's still about curation, it's still about variety, but we've gotten to the point where people want coffee from us every other week, and so
Mhm.
that's been a huge product change, and also a success. Early on in the data, we had this tasting subscription, and then we added this bag subscription, and we would kind of see people start at the lower price point tasting and
Mhm.
move to the bag and then cancel their tasting subscription. And so we saw that natural migration, and we've and people would also be like, oh, I like this, but I drink more coffee than I'll drink this in a week or 4 days.
Mhm.
That's probably,
Mhm.
I think you said at one point, right? And so I think like we're there to where we're kind of filling people's cup every day, and that's where we've wanted to be as a business. It provides better lifetime value if you're doing
Mhm.
that versus sampling. But if you look at our gift offerings, like our World Coffee Tour, our new U.S. Coffee Road Trip, our coffee and chocolate pairings, those are still like samplings of
Mhm.
what Beanbox does. They're little experiences or big experiences that people really enjoy and are great gifts. But we've had to learn how to address different segments, right? Like there's a gift recipient, a gift buyer, and then there's someone who wants to enjoy the coffee themselves. And those products are slightly different.
What has been an example of a product assumption that y'all had in the beanbox era that turned out to be just way, way off? Because it feels like you hit it early and it's been, pretty smooth going from the outside. Have there been times where you're like, yeah, we were super excited about this idea, just didn't work the way we thought it would, in that beanbox era?
Yeah, and Tom, in 9 years, we have so like, too many examples of that. Like, I mean, the truth is, I don't know what it looks like from the outside. We've had a lot of clear successes. Like, we've built an 8-figure business. Like, we have a business that's like on its way to very sustainable, and
Mhm.
I think so. There are a lot of successes and things I think that I and Matthew, we dreamed of achieving that. But along the way, you screw a lot of things up, and you learn what your opportunities are. And I think not transitioning from that personal tasting experience to daily consumption, taking so long to do that, I think that was a mistake. I think we've because we saw early success around gifting, we
Mhm.
just expanded that so much. And I think with a physical product, when you start expanding your catalog, it also impacts the operating infrastructure
Mhm.
around it. And so you create all this complexity that only might bring you incremental sales, right?
Mhm.
And from a sales standpoint, you're like, well, if you add all these incremental things together, like that's a good thing, but not for the bottom line. And so I think we've definitely gone through periods of flaring with products
Mhm.
and then bringing them back into kind of what's kind of 90-10 in terms of performance for us, and also in terms of complexity, in terms of being able to fulfill for product
Mhm.
and deliver. So I think like those are kind of two examples, but we have, I mean, cold brew. We launched cold brew in 2021 and learned, we were lucky because beans are so light to ship, but cold brew pre-brewed is not light to ship. And so
Mm-hmm.
like that creates all sorts of barriers, even though we thought from a product perspective, the cold brew had Beanbox's DNA. It was like a two coffee experience that packed together. People loved it.
Mm.
People still ask us about the cold brew, but and it's something we might bring back in a different way. But that was an example of that product just didn't work in our existing kind of distribution strategy.
Yeah, so the cold brew experiment was it was a liquid that you would ship out. How much would you send out to people?
So it was kind of two like liters.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so in order to also, we buy beans wholesale from our partners all across the country. And that's like an understood model for us. Now, all of a sudden we were in the business working with a third party who was taking our coffee recipes, producing them in large volumes.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you had to hit a certain volume point in sale
Yeah.
to even make sense.
Yeah.
And then again, the pricing, the shipping that you'd have to add to it added another barrier, right?
Hearing you describe it now makes perfect sense why the replacing bags of beans, high volume, lots of fairly simpler kind of approach, helps the customer with their problem. Makes perfect sense. You mentioned that it took time to kind of focus on that as like the key act. Why do you think it took a while for you to crack it? Like, what was holding you all back from making the decision earlier?
Yeah, I think when you're early on, and early on, I mean, in the first kind of 4 or 5 years, even, like you are really thinking about traction and
Mm-hmm.
volume and, growing sales. And that's what people want to see, like big
Mm-hmm.
growth rates. And if you put on your business owner hat, where you're like, no, we got to make money, like you would think about things a little differently. You would streamline more, and you would think more about how do we increase either average order value or lifetime value more than you would think about volume. We were still trying
Mm-hmm.
to find different ways to sell higher volumes of the products we had and expand the catalog. That was our thinking on growth. But when you think about building a sustainable business that can still grow quickly, you need to be paying back faster. You need to have cohorts that are stacking up faster,
Mm-hmm.
bigger multiples to what you're spending to bring them in. And so, we had see the thing was, outside of just growing quickly, we weren't churning customers like crazy. People love Beanbox. Our reviews were great. People told us, we knew the coffee was good. So we thought in that case, then the playbook is volume and
Mm-hmm.
expansion. But I think where we've kind of gotten our education is around like core unit economics, the math matters, and the complexity of your business matters. And I think there are all these like great larger company examples of streamlining. There's the
Mm-hmm.
Steve Jobs comes back and cuts all the products.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Mulally going to Ford and cutting their product line down to like 3, and then all of a sudden they started growing and their costs were more efficient. And I think we went through like the same micro realization, and I think the numbers are much like our subscriber LTVs are over 2x what they were when we were just doing tasting boxes, which allows you to spend a little bit more to
Mm-hmm.
bring customers in. So it's like almost counterintuitive when you're in those early phases. But yeah.
Now, Ryan, you guys have been financed in some ways it's traditional. There's looks like angels and maybe some institutional funding. But you were not the classic tech startup of raising a new lettered round every 6 to 9 months. And I almost wonder if that was a blessing, because it's, to your point earlier, you weren't as beholden to kind of like the vanity top line metrics of the chart going up and to the right. Like you could kind of play a longer game. Tell us a little bit about like how the financing of the company either helped or hindered, Beanbox over the years.
Yeah, Matthew and I talk about this a lot. I mean, there was a fork in the road, I think, at one point in 2018 where we could have taken some venture funding,
Mm-hmm.
gone down that path, or pursued it a lot harder. And I think if we did that, I don't know if we'd be around, honestly. And I think it's because you are on that course where it's all about growth, and you're not forced to have certain constraints around your thinking, and that kind of have allowed us to land to a healthier place. And I think also having the control to kind of learn and chart that path, I think, has been very important for us. And I will say we have a very supportive group of angel investors, that all of them are still around the business and sharing, and like people even from when we were a mobile app business in that 500 square foot space in
Yeah.
Fremont
Yeah.
are all still with us and cheering them. And some of them are observers on our board, and that's like just a really great feeling. And they've kind of seen that
Mm.
journey. But yeah, I think you're right. The financing is a big, allowed us optionality, flexibility, allowed us to take a longer term approach that maybe we wouldn't have. And I think the reason I say maybe we wouldn't have been around, there are anomalies like the pandemic,
Mm.
which lead to a crazy surge in changes in the business. And it was very good for us. But if you were to take that and add rocket fuel to it, like you'd find yourself in a different place post pandemic where your operating structure is
Right.
out of control, right? Because you're just trying to capitalize on the opportunity, just like a lot of people were in tech, and Amazon is like
Mm-hmm.
people were coming, so you had to keep fulfilling the orders and reach more of them. That was the thinking, and it would have been crazy not to. Um, but there are a lot of people, and you kind of see it in the news all year, where
Yeah.
even large businesses like Peloton, or people who took venture, are in bankruptcy
Yeah.
because of kind of the change in momentum. And so we've been able to weather it a little bit.
How do you think about that from a career perspective? You could have taken a more traditional path of kind of climbing the tech product management ladder. And that would have, had some pros and cons.
Yeah.
You could have gone for more overnight moonshot kind of startup opportunities, and who knows what would have happened. And you've gone on this path where you've been at Beanbox since the beginning, and it's a pretty long stretch, right? It's
And it's
very unusual.
9 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Like most people don't spend 9 years in a city. But you've been at the same company. Like, how's
Yeah.
that been for you?
I mean, my son was 6 months old when we
Yeah.
started Beanbox, and he's now 9, 9.5. So I, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't love everything about it. I truly love what we do. I love having a physical product.
Mm,
I love having a co-founder, and Matthew Burke, that where we can apply innovative technology to a kind of food and beverage category product. I think that's still exciting. I mean, that was part of our pitch when we started,
Mm-hmm.
but it is exciting. Like, we just launched a new iOS app, a new Android app, and we didn't hire anyone to do it. And that is cool, and that's an advantage. And so I get to be a marketer. I get to uh, we get to reach 100,000 people a year, and to be in their kitchen. I get to work on all these tough kind of unit economic problems, and think about how we reduce complexity. So on the product side, and for me, it's just like I love it, and like I've paid to be in it in a lot of ways, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I could have probably made more money during this period, uh, either on a moonshot that became successful, but who knows, or in a larger company.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, like, it's truly like you have to love it to endure. I think what we have over the last 9 years, and like this is our business, and it's like been a big part of my family, right? Like, all my kids, I have 3 kids, and they all make coffee with me in the morning. We do like Chemex pour over, and our youngest Everett is 3.5. He grinds the beans and pours the filter, and so it feels, it's like a weird blend between doing what you kind of sparked in me to love in tech and product management, but applying it to almost like this lifestyle-y consumer thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that blend is just attractive, and I think, I'm in it for the long-term outcome, and I think hopefully that will pay off, right? Like, hopefully the passion and the outcomes align over time, and I don't kind of have any regrets there. But as of right now, I love who I work with, and I love the business, love the product, and the challenges we deal with. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, congrats to you. I feel like it's clearly already a huge success, and you've beat so many odds. And what a blessing it is to work on something 9 years later that, your eyes light up talking about it, and you love the team that you're working with. Many people, they don't have that, and certainly they're not able to get that for years and years. So kudos to you. I'm curious, Ryan, if you think about advice that you would give to folks coming up, uh, the next generation of product leaders out there, uh, what what kind of advice do you share with recent college grads, or aspiring PMs and entrepreneurs that maybe you wish you had taken in more directly when you were there at that point in your career?
Yeah, I think the being able to make small bets is very important. So, and I think this applies to all forms of
Hmm.
product management, startups, and later stage businesses. Like, the act of being able to do something that costs nothing, that potentially has a disproportionate return. And I think, like, that is one principle that guides me. So I think, like, a lot of times people will propose a way of doing something that seems to them like a minimum viable product, but it is still too rich. And,
Mm,
I think there are very cheap ways to validate and prove what you're doing. I think customer empathy is really important, and there are a lot of ways we get that here at Beanbox. But um, the other part of the equation is sales traction. And for me, that has to be validated live. And so you have to find the most kind of inexpensive ways, whether it's making tweaks on a website before you have a product, like we
mhm,
Box, and we still do stuff like that, whether it's kind of changing prices, landing pages, product format. Like, you have to give yourself more at bats in
mhm,
order to be successful. And if you have more at bats, like over time, you will give yourself a chance to be successful. And so I think that pairs kind of with what you were talking about with financing. I used to think that when I got into the startup game, that you know the gold standard was you had to be venture backed, and that's how you grow. That's how it's like, especially for a consumer business, you need a lot of
Mm-hmm.
money. That's what we were always told. I think there are other ways of doing it, and there are people very happy who have found other ways of doing it. And so while you see like the one or two examples out of the thousands that have been done, kind of if followed venture, I think there are other ways of doing it, and it's okay to take that longer term path. You just got to get people around you who are supportive and willing to be on that journey with you. But it does exist, and so you should really think about that. Those are kind of two, and then I'd say the third thing is businesses. You can't think about products in isolation. Like getting people to love products is great, but if that means it's too complex to build that product, that's also not good.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to scale. And you need to be able to get sales traction at a low cost. And so you have to validate those three buckets. And for me, I think I came into this with all like the product love, and
Mm-hmm.
that was an awesome place to start. But I think you need to add those other components. You really have to understand like what's the cost of building it, fulfilling it, and how do we understand sales traction? Like if we were to give it away for free, like what would our cost per acquisition be? That's a really interesting experiment. Like if this was so easy to sell, what would it look like? Let's try that.
Mm.
Because maybe it won't be easy to sell, right? And that's something that a lot of startups learn, right?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of working in those three buckets, I say, are pretty important.
That second point around you don't have to be kind of hair on fire series ABC in like 18 months kind of thing is such an interesting point, because if you want to optimize for probability of being the next, kind of unicorn, that might be a very plausible path. If, on the other hand, as a founder, what you want to do is maximize your probability of building a healthy, sustainable business, then, that earlier path is sort of like, hey, you go for the grand slam on the first pitch. If it happens, great. If not, like, you're out, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean the
Yeah.
odds like are so stacked against you.
Yeah.
Like the odds of surviving 5 years. I mean, you go to a casino and you have better odds. The odds of an 8-figure business are so low. You're less than a point. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
well, you have to give yourself more at bats. And I think the way to do that is to find ways to make little bets here and there. The other kind of point of feedback that I think really resonates, I think it resonates with you too. I know your boy Clay Christensen at Harvard wrote a few good books. And one of the things that really stuck with me, and I still carry today, is what job does your product do?
Mm.
And I think like that is so vital to anchor yourself around, because like maybe your product is a shortcut. Maybe people are using your product or service because it's curated and you get them to the three options. And so, or maybe it's because it stokes their ego. Like you really have to understand the job that the customer is hiring the product for. And I think once you truly understand that, you'd come up with a slightly different roadmap and you think about your product a little differently.
Yeah, totally agree. And you see that today where there's so much excitement around generative AI
Mhm.
that I notice that people are rarely talking about the customer problems they're trying to solve. It's
Yeah.
more on like, well, how many parameters is this new model? And,
Yeah.
how do we figure out hallucination? And those are important issues.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, this thing needs to do something for someone that's of value.
It,
Yeah.
it's that. And then there is some existing market share It could
Mhm.
be super innovative in a new category, but there has to be some market share that you're trying to take.
Yeah.
And like, in order for it to be a real business, like the market needs to exist in some way, even though it's a new solution. And so like, if you don't know the job the product is doing, and you don't know what market share you're taking, like, I think that's what I think about when I think about a lot of kind of the AI boom. And
Yeah.
I mean, you can say that about every kind of tech boom, but that's what I see right now.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, like a lot of the Web3, like the blockchain NFT stuff, like I think now we're seeing like, well, what problem were we trying to solve with these NFTs? You know?
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
it's reflected in, kind of the state of that market. But I'm probably more optimistic that AI will have some big wins. I also think that folks working on those projects, um, they can't ignore the job that the customer is hiring you to do, and the fact that they are currently retaining other people or products to do that job. And you've got to compete for that and solve a big problem for them. Otherwise, it's the technology is kind of necessary but not sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, I now get pitched on all sorts of AI
Oh yeah, I
SaaS
bet.
products to help us grow
Mhm.
constantly, and I take those calls to learn, and then I talk to our D2C peer references to like
Mhm.
understand what they're doing. And I think to the extent it's baked into maximizing a channel or helping us do something with less people, uh, it's great and powerful, and it will prevail in different ways. But it's all within kind of the buckets of like, okay, how are we trying to make money, and
Mhm.
does it fit, and it's something that we're doing that's existing, or is it something kind of new that we've never thought about, but it's got to fit in kind of how we need to make money and survive. And so anyways, yeah.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, I love the kind of no nonsense. Like I feel like maybe when we work together, I think both of us were super pumped up about product strategy and product leadership and product management done really well.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, we've both seen that it is necessary and it's crucial. It's part of a bigger recipe for a successful business. And to your point, like marketing, unit economics, operations, finance, these are all just as important as product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the other thing is process. Everybody's got
Mhm.
we've gone through so many different processes at Beanbox, ways of doing things, specifically product management.
Mhm.
And I think like, at the end of the day, if it allows us to kind of get more at bats,
Yeah.
then I think it's a good thing. And but there's not like one way of doing something in product that's going
Mhm.
to lead to success. Like, it comes back to the principles of the business, and giving yourself a chance to be successful and get real live traction faster, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and that could change even for the same company depending on where it is in its life cycle and what other factors are kind of at play in that given year or given quarter. So it's a never-ending process of learning.
Yeah, I that's what it is. I think I'm constantly learning. That's what makes it fun. I know you're learning, and it's like, we're always seeking mastery, right?
Yes,
It's so elusive.
it is. It is. I used to have a blog about product called Always Be Shipping, but if I did it again, I think I'd call it Always Be Learning.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, Ryan Fritzky, co-founder of Beanbox, so great to catch up with you on the podcast and also to hear about the story and the lessons learned. Any final thoughts or shout outs that you want to make before we wrap up?
I just listened to Tom, and his enthusiasm is what made this all possible here at Beanbox, you've been a great kind of friend and a sounding board over the years. And I look forward to catching up with you over some coffee when you travel up north.
Yes, yes. Well, now, especially this is a great time of year to be in Seattle. So I will, if I'm up there again, for sure, you'll be one of the first people I call, and I look forward to maybe I'll have you. You can have the kids do a little preparation for me. I can watch the child labor
Yeah,
in the
we'll
Fritzky
do a
kitchen.
visit for you. And if you haven't been a customer of Beanbox or tried Beanbox and you love coffee, please give it a try. My email is just Ryan, RYAN at beanbox.com. Send me an email with any thoughts. But I'm always open to feedback and just love hearing from customers in general. So
Yeah, and for
try.
a first time Beanbox customer, is it pretty much well configured, like how they should engage with you all, or are there any tips or suggestions on how to get the most out of your Beanbox experience when you first
Yeah,
hit
so
that site?
you can go to beanbox.com right now, and if you're a first-time customer, you can get a free tasting flight with any coffee plan, and so you can experience the variety and kind of see the different roasters we have from across the country. And I think it's not like buying a mattress. It's like $20 a month, and so I think kind of getting into it and getting the experience and seeing the coffees we're picking from you. We have a world class coffee expert who's picking the coffees from our 60 different roasters across the country, and just give it a try.
I love it. Do you still put the little caramel things in there? The little
Yeah,
sweet.
so we do caramels in the warmer weather. We have kind of these small batch made John Boy caramels from Ballard in Seattle,
Mm,
and then we shift to chocolates in the cooler months. So
love it.
yeah.
It sounds amazing, Ryan. Congrats again, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot, Tom. It's been a pleasure. See you
See,
soon.
bye.